Good Sunday morning, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for September the 10th. Today we are reading together in 1 Kings chapter 15, which is going to continue to progress us through the various kings that arise either in the northern portion of the Jewish nation of Israel or in the southern portion of Judah. We're going to run through quite a few kings today. One of the mainstays is going to be King Asa. He's actually going to reign for over 4 decades. He's going to see a lot of kings come and go in Israel while he remains on the throne in Judah. And a lot of that longevity might be because he seems to be a pretty decent king, although he has a number of striking similarities to Solomon. Very interesting. And also, I'll just point out as well that what we have here in Kings, there's more detail that is given to us in the Chronicles. So I'm not going to sit here and go to the Chronicles and expound upon everything that is seen here in the Kings. We'll just wait till we get to the Chronicles since we're reading through that as well. And we will refer back to what we see in the Kings and just expound upon it at that point. So just know, you might be wondering, hey, why don't you bring up this aspect of this particular person's life? Well, that's just because it's not in this particular text, but we will recognize that and highlight that in our read through Chronicles here in the next couple months or so. So with all that said, let me get the text of 1 Kings up on the screen for us. We'll read together 1 Kings chapter 15 and verse number 1. In the 18th year of Israel's king Jeroboam, son of Nebat, Abijam became king over Judah, and he reigned 3 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Maacah, daughter of Abishalom. Abijam walked in all the sins his father before him had committed, and he was not wholly devoted to Yahweh his God as his ancestor David had been. But for the sake of David, Yahweh his God gave him a lamp in Jerusalem by raising up his son after him and by preserving Jerusalem. For David did what was right in Yahweh's sight, and he did not turn aside from anything he had commanded him all the days of his life, except in the matter of Uriah the Hittite. There had been war between Rehoboam and Jeroboam all the days of Rehoboam's life. The rest of the events of Abijam's reign, along with all his accomplishments, are written in the historical record of Judah's kings. There was also war between Abijam and Jeroboam. Abijam rested with his ancestors and was buried in the city of David. His son Asa became king in his place. In the 20th year of Israel's king Jeroboam, Asa became king of Judah, and he reigned 41 years in Jerusalem. His grandmother's name was Maacah, daughter of Abishalom. Asa did what was right in Yahweh's sight, as his ancestor David had done. He banished the male cult prostitutes from the land and removed all the idols that his ancestors had made. He also removed his grandmother Maacah from being queen mother because she had made an obscene image of Asherah. Asa chopped down her obscene image and burned it in the Kidron Valley. The high places were not taken away, but Asa was wholeheartedly devoted to Yahweh his entire life. And he brought his father's consecrated gifts and his own consecrated gifts into Yahweh's temple, silver, gold, and utensils. There was war between Asa and King Baasha of Israel throughout their reigns. Israel's king Baasha went to war against Judah. He built Ramah in order to keep anyone from leaving or coming to King Asa of Judah. So Asa withdrew all the silver and gold that remained in the treasuries of Yahweh's temple and the treasuries of the royal palace and gave it to his servants. Then King Asa sent them to Ben-Hadad, son of Tabrimon, son of Hezion, king of Aram, who lived in Damascus, saying, "There's a treaty between me and you, between my father and your father. Look, I have sent you a gift of silver and gold. Go and break your treaty with King Baasha of Israel so that he will withdraw from me." Ben-Hadad listened to King Asa and sent the commanders of his armies against the cities of Israel. He attacked Ijon, Dan, Abel, Beth-Maacah, all Chinnereth, and the whole land of Naphtali. When Baasha heard about it, he quit building Ramah and stayed in Tirzah. Then King Asa made a command to everyone without exception in Judah, and they carried away the stones of Ramah and the timbers Baasha had built with it. Then King Asa built Geba of Benjamin and Mizpah with them. The rest of all the events of Asa's reign, along with all his mights, all his accomplishments, and the cities he built, are written in the historical record of Judah's kings. But in his old age, he developed a disease in his feet. Then Asa rested with his ancestors and was buried in the city of his ancestor David. His son Jehoshaphat became king in his place. Nadab, son of Jeroboam, became king over Israel in the second year of Judah's king Asa. He reigned over Israel 2 years. Nadab did what was evil in Yahweh's sight and walked in the ways of his father and the sin he had caused Israel to commit. Then Baasha, son of Ahijah of the house of Issachar, conspired against Nadab, and Baasha struck down at Gibbethon all of the Philistines, while Nadab and all Israel were besieging Gibbethon. So he struck down Nadab. In the third year of Judah's king Asa, Baasha killed Nadab and reigned in his place. When Baasha became king, he struck down the entire house of Jeroboam. He did not leave Jeroboam any survivors, but destroyed his family, according to the word of Yahweh he had spoken through his servant Ahijah the Shilonite. This was because Jeroboam had angered Yahweh, God of Israel, by the sins he had committed and had caused Israel to commit. The rest of the events of Nadab's reign, along with all his accomplishments, are written in the historical record of Israel's kings. There was war between Asa and King Baasha of Israel throughout their reigns. And in the third year of Judah's king Asa, Baasha, son of Ahijah, became king over all Israel, and he reigned in Tirzah 24 years. He did what was evil in Yahweh's sight and walked in the ways of Jeroboam and the sin he had caused Israel to commit. And that is 1 Kings chapter 15, where we are again introduced to more of the kings down the line of Israel and Judah. I have let's see here. I have a screenshot of a table that is in my Bible. I'll see how big this shows up on your screen. Hopefully you see that decently well. Again, if I remember, I will do my best to drop this in the comments on this particular video, so you can check this out. Just a note here, these are the kings that were taking place during the time of this divided monarchy. So you see the first three that are mentioned and detailed here are in Judah, Rehoboam, Abijam, and then Asa. And you'll notice here, you can kind of tell how long they reigned based upon the size of their particular blocks. Because notice we have two that are pretty sequential in their reign. Jeroboam the first is right there with Rehoboam. Abijam right there with Nadab, and this little asterisk here shows that they were assassinated. And then notice that during King Asa's term, we have a number of kings that are mentioned here. Going back up here, let's see. 4 to 5 are mentioned here. Baasha, Elah, Zimri, and the Omrides. The ones we're going to see here are Baasha. But again, it's kind of hard without a table like this to kind of square the chronology of everything, because it doesn't go right in order. And like, for instance, the text tells us that Asa reigned 41 years. Well, during that 41 years, we're going to see Baasha come and go. We're going to see Elah come and go. We're going to see Zimri come and go, and these other ones as well. So something like this just helps in trying to keep things straight. So that is something that you'll have here. And again, I will do my best to try to remember to drop that in the comment section. Let's see here. Let me make sure we're looking good. All right. So thinking about this text, then again, we have after Jeroboam, we have his son, it seems, Abijam. He comes into he becomes king. Let me see here. Yes, his son Abijam became king in his place. That's why we see the chapter 14. And we see again, or we see an interesting connection here between him, that his mother was Maacah, and it says the daughter of Abishalom. You might notice that kind of sounds a little bit like Absalom, and there's some thought here that maybe this woman was a part of Absalom's lineage. She was part of that branch of David's descendants. Somehow, some way, she might have married it. I don't know. There's just some thought because of the name there that might be something that's going on there, which is interesting to think about. But as far as the character of Abijam goes, he was pretty terrible. He walked in all the sins, the text says, of his father. So everything that Jeroboam had done, it seems that he just carried those things on. And it says specifically in verse number 3, he was not wholeheartedly devoted to Yahweh his God like David had been. You'll notice as we go through these kings that there's a lot of comparison and contrasting between two specific figures. Number one, you'll see whenever somebody's good, they're often compared with David, that they walked like David walked. And if they're evil, then they walked like Jeroboam walked. So both of those really set the standard for evil that is found within these various kingdoms. I think only Ahab or however you say his name, Jezebel's husband, he is said to have been even worse than Jeroboam. So that's something to consider. But for the rest, I'm pretty sure in the northern kingdom, they all are referred to in some sort of way as walking in the ways of Jeroboam. We see that even within this particular text. Well, with this being the case, we have no wonder here. I was confused. I have these colored here. Rehoboam was Abijam's father. So if I said Jeroboam earlier, please forgive me. These things get kind of wonky again, just trying to keep up with who's whose son. That would make sense why this particular person is colored a certain way in my Bible. So there is the Absalom tie-in. Maybe there's something within the family there. Anyways, he did not walk like so going back to verse 3, then he walked in the sins of his father before him had committed. He was not wholeheartedly devoted to Yahweh his God, not referring to Jeroboam, but referring to Solomon. That makes a lot more sense now. Sorry about that. He did not walk like David, his grandfather or great grandfather, I think it would be. So you have Abijam, and then his father would be Rehoboam, and his father would be Solomon, and his father would be David. So father, grandfather, great grandfather. There we go. He did not walk in the ways of his great grandfather David, but instead walked in the ways of Solomon. And for that, he's not going to last all that long. He's going to end up being judged, and he's going to have his son Asa ends up taking over his throne. It's very interesting to me seeing how the author of the King's text refers to David. It says, for David did what was right in Yahweh's sight. He did not turn aside from anything he had commanded him all the days of his life, except in the matter of Uriah the Hittite. So the whole David and Bathsheba scene is highlighted as being the one real transgression and misstep of David's life, which again is that, I don't know, that just gives me a lot to think about as far as David's life. We know that this was the only mistake David made. He made other mistakes too. But again, is David being judged based upon a moment of misstep and a moment of mistake? Or is he being judged based upon the totality of his character and the totality of who he is, save for the one really big incident concerning Bathsheba? If we believe that the author of the Kings is working with the Spirit, and I certainly believe that, I'm sure you do as well, that should maybe tell us again how we should consider the people of Scripture, that we recognize their flawed nature. We recognize the mistakes they make. We recognize the weakness that they had, but they are judged based upon not the mistake necessarily, but again, the totality of the character, the totality of who they are. Just the way David's described here makes me think about that a lot. But then from Abijam, we go to Asa. Again, Asa sees 4 to 5 kings in Israel rise and fall during that time. And again, Ma'akah, the daughter of Abishalom, is mentioned again. And as opposed to his father, Abijam, the text says that Asa did what was right in Yahweh's sight, as his ancestor David did. He went through and took care of a lot of the sin that was present within Israel. He took care of the male prostitutes, kicked them out. He removed all the idols that his father had made, his fathers had made, Solomon and Rehoboam and Abijam. He removed Ma'akah from this place of influence and authority within the land. She had herself had made an Asherah, and that was destroyed. Now, verse 14 does tell us the high places were not taken away. These seem to be places where Yahweh was worshipped, but they shouldn't have been. They should not have been places for this, because the temple was now established, and that should have been one place for worship. It seems they remained. However, even with that, again, this makes me think of this is very curious to me, and it seems to be consistent with the way David was described. Asa was wholeheartedly devoted to Yahweh his entire life. Even though he made mistakes, he didn't fully get rid of the high places as he should have. He's still described as someone being wholeheartedly devoted to Yahweh his entire life. And then that's just very interesting to me, that even though there are mistakes, this is still the way he is being described. And again, there's more details in the Chronicles account. We'll talk about those whenever we get there here in a couple months. We are told that there was war between Asa and Baasha of Israel. And one of the things Baasha did is he tried to encroach upon the territory of Judah. He goes south and starts to build up Ramah in order to use that kind of like as a gate, not allow anybody to go to Asa, and to not allow anybody from Asa to come up into him. And instead of looking to Yahweh, it seems, Asa turns to Ben-Hadad and asks for help from him. He sends him a gift of wealth, of silver and gold, and says, hey, will you help us out? We've got a treaty. We break the treaty that you have with Baasha in order to help me. And that's what Ben-Hadad does. He attacks a lot of the cities within Israel, and that forces Baasha to quit building Ramah. And then, again, I talked about there being similarities between Asa and Solomon in the fact that he then puts forced labor upon his people to go and to take away the stones of Ramah and the timbers that Baasha had been using to build Ramah. And then King Asa himself built a Geba of Benjamin and Mizpah with them. In his old age, we're told that he developed a disease in his feet. Very interesting there. Wonder what the issue was there. Could it be that this is some punishment for some mistake he made in his old age? There are some who speculate that. But after Asa, we see that Jehoshaphat ends up being the next king in his place. And we're not going to see him for quite a while, I do not believe. Let me see here. I don't think he shows up in this text till much later. Let's see. I'm pretty sure it's much later on down the road. Oh, let's see. We got a lot from, chapter 22, I think, is whenever Jehoshaphat really comes back onto the scene. Yeah, it's not mentioned on this table either. So we have a while. There's the big after chapter 16, from the end of chapter 16 on, we have the big interlude where Ahab is one of the main characters with Elijah and such. So we'll have to get back to Judah later on. We're going to focus for a while there on Israel. Speaking of Israel, the next king after Jeroboam was Nadab. That's mentioned back in chapter 14 in verse number 20. And he wasn't any better than Jeroboam. He did what was evil in Yahweh's sight, walked in the ways of his father, and the sin he had committed, or he had caused Israel to commit. Well, there's this man who his name is Baasha. We mentioned him. He is the son of Ahijah, and that is not Abijah from 14:1, and it's also not Ahijah the prophet that was mentioned back in chapter 14 as well. This is just a different Ahijah. And again, unfortunately, they all have very similar names, I think, just to confuse us, honestly. But he ends up rising up and killing Nadab. And he also struck down the entire house of Jeroboam. And the text tells us that he did not leave any survivors. And this was done in accordance with the word, the prophecy that had been spoken in chapter 14, verse 14 by Yahweh through the prophet Ahijah, that Jeroboam's house would be destroyed, and that certainly was the case. 31 tells us that, again, like all these other kings, the events of Nadab's reign are mentioned in the historical record of Israel's kings, and there was war between Asa and Baasha of Israel throughout their reigns. We read about that earlier, where Asa got one of the pagan kings involved. And then we see some more. We see the confirmation here that Baasha, the son of Ahijah, became king over Israel. He reigned in Tirzah for 24 years. But again, I think we're probably sensing a pattern here with the kings of the northern tribe. He did what was evil in Yahweh's sight and walked in the ways of Jeroboam and the sin he had caused Israel to commit. So whenever we pick up tomorrow in our read chapter 16, we're going to see the judgment that is going to come upon him, and we will see the one who ends up supplanting him as king. And we're actually going to see a number of them. We're going to see Elah in chapter 16. We're going to see Zimri in 16. We're going to see Omri in 16. We're going to see again Ahab in 16 as well. And again, once we see Ahab, we're going to see a lot of the story begin to progress with him and Elijah being the main focus at the end of 16 on for quite a few chapters. If you have any questions about this text here in 15, please feel free to leave that in the comment section below. And again, I will do my best to put that screenshot in the comments. If you don't see it, leave me a comment. That way it'll pop up and remind me to do so. I can't drop it in there whenever I schedule these videos. I have to go back after the fact, and I forget a lot of times, so please forgive me for that. But feel free to send me a reminder so I can make sure to get that posted. Again, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave that in the comment section. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody here in just a little bit for our Bible studies and our worship assembly. We're going to be talking today about angels. No, not my family, but the angels that are found in Scripture. There's a lot of detail about, well, I say there's a lot of detail. There's a lot of mention of angels in Scripture. There's probably not as much detail and descriptive things written about them as we might appreciate, so we can know more. But I think there's enough there for us to understand a good bit about who they are and what God created them to do, and what it might teach us about how He views us and His care and actually provisions for us. So I'm excited to talk about that. One of the kids mentioned that in our young people study. They like to hear a lesson on angels and such, so that's what I'm going to do tomorrow. I might spur on some discussion for our young people study here in a few weeks as well. But again, I appreciate you taking time to read along with me on this Sunday. Hope you have a great rest of your Sunday. May God bless you today on His day, and I hope we all have a wonderful time, an encouraging time, an uplifting time, an edifying time spent in His Word today. Take care, and God bless.